Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining. My name is Anan Hanna. I'm one of the SEs here at Securematics. Today, we are going to discuss one of the very hot topics, which is the Juniper Connected Security with Bill Kine from Juniper. So this is actually part of the our technical series webinars for 2020, and we prefer to keep this topic till the end because it has many requests and it has many audiences wanted to hear about it. So hopefully we can give you a very valuable information with the help of Bill Kine today. But before I hand it out to Bill, I just wanted to highlight a couple of services that my engineering department can actually assist you with. First of all, of course, the pre-sales support. So you will have a dedicated SE, could be myself or one of my colleagues, Keegan or Brian, who can assist you with jumping on calls with your end users, can assist you with building a bill of material for you, help you with a design or anything concerned with your technical inquiries. So please feel free to reach out to us. We can definitely utilize our experience with you guys. So the other service that we have is the large demo pool. It has a very refreshed and very high-end equipment from Mist, from Juniper, and other vendors that we carry. So please feel free to utilize it. The request for it is very easy. Simply go to our website and select the model you want. We usually ship it same day to you guys. The professional services is one of the services that we also do here at Securematics. So, and it could be a very important and a key selling point to close deals with your end users. So if you needed any adding power supplies or adding models, doing license activations, we can definitely assist you with that. Last one is actually learning journey. We can assist with the guidance, help you with choosing the right path for the learning, assist with upgrading your partnership level with Juniper. And this is, of course, very important to get better discounts or better benefits from Juniper. So please feel free to reach out to either myself or one of our team, and from here I will hand it out to Bill Kine to discuss with you the Juniper Connected Security briefly. Bill?
Thanks, Anan. And good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, depending upon your time zone. My name's Bill Kine. I'm a systems engineer with Juniper, and I'm based out of Orange County, California. Really, above and beyond all else, I want to leave everybody with two messages. So the first one, if you do have some security concerns, opportunities, challenges, please let us help you out. Juniper and Securematics are both here to help you secure your vital information. And by the way, those security parameters or requirements have really changed in 2020. Network dynamics have changed, and a lot of the bad actors have found interesting new ways to exploit these changes as well. So message one, let us help. Message two is we're not here to talk about network security. We call it Juniper Connected Security. And the difference there, although it may be a bit subtle, is instead of building network security, we want to help you build a secure network. So the essence of that means consider security at the outset. It should never really be an afterthought. When you look at switches, routers, APs, any of your network infrastructure, all of those are points of vulnerability, but they could also be used as points of security for both detection, and enforcement. And that's a concept Juniper brings to the party with what we call connected security. So I'd like to say, backed by popular demand, I agree with what Anand says that we really didn't put security on one of the top lists for what we wanted to talk to the collected team and organization about, but it was requested after the last 2 seminars pretty heavily, and I'm really delighted to see that too. I suspect that some of the 2020 factors are driving that interest. So with that, a brief introductory slide here. If we look at the history of network security, that word that we're not going to use anymore. Way back in the dark ages of the 1990s, network security was simply a firewall between the network and the big bad outside world. If you get into the 2000s, many of the bad actors had found ways around those firewalls. So now you really had to secure the infrastructure and the data itself. You were looking at things such as advanced threat protection, advanced threat prevention. Excuse me, a little tongue-tied on that one. You were looking at IDP. You were looking at content security. All those came into play in the early 2000s. Coming into the 2010s, the cloud really became the focus of many networks. And, you know, I've got to hand it to companies like AWS. They invest a lot in security. Funny thing there is that they're not trying to protect your data so much as they're trying to protect their network from you. Now, as a byproduct, they do protect your data as well, but that's their secondary concern. So come the 2010s, we also were talking to a lot of customers about how to actually secure their cloud data with regards to restricted access, encryption, and just overall firewall characteristics. So now we're in the 2020s, and what we want to do is look at the big holistic picture of actual network security. So we want to give, or the secure network. I said the word that I was trying to encourage you not to say. So we want to give organizations the ability to safeguard their users, their applications, their infrastructure, their cloud resources by extending security to all points of connection across the network. And that's kind of our mission statement at Juniper when it comes to security. Or changing the picture a little bit from just a single padlock and key. Now we have those pretty much everywhere in the enterprise. Secure everything, everywhere. That's our objective. Now, that doesn't mean you have to go rebuild your network by any means. If you are doing a network refresh, please consider security at the outset, not as an afterthought. But this is a case where you can right size based upon how much is appropriate for your organization. Take as much or as little as you need based upon your requirements, your perceived threats, and also I'm sure budget plays into that very heavily as well. So what do we want to do with the network? Basically, three common objectives. First and foremost, this is a security discussion. So at the bottom right, you see protect. You need to have security efficacy. If you don't have security efficacy, there's no point in talking about any of the other things. This is a little bit out of order in my mind with regards to these items on the left, or on the right rather, because I think seeing or vision or identifying issues and analytics and being able to understand what's going on to the network is probably the next most important step. And then automation. By the time somebody attacks your network, collects the data, downloads all the credit cards, and gets out, could all occur in a matter of minutes, sometimes even seconds. So by the time that's detected, that's analyzed, that's recognized, and one of these awkward human units is actually notified of it so that they can then look at all the information and maybe build a new ACL to prevent that from happening again, the damage is long since done. So automation should really play into any connected security discussion as well, such that when a day zero threat is detected, a day zero prevention mechanism is also put into place. So those three together make a or can be used to create a good security profile for any enterprise. The Juniper components for this, well, first of all, once again, you need basic security efficacy, so that's at the bottom, a sophisticated threat detection engine, and we do not have the technology to do that ourselves. We certainly do build firewalls. We certainly are constantly updating those. We do have APT detection. We do have IDP. Pick your favorite acronym for the security industry. It's there. But we can never stay ahead of the bad guys. We're grossly outnumbered and we're grossly outfunded. So with regards to that, we also use a lot of partnerships and also cloud resources as well. So a sophisticated threat detection engine is a pretty cool buzzword on a slide, but there really are lots of components to that I'll talk about. On top of that, we need centralized policies and management and analytics. So in other words, something to control all of that. Something to push out new applications to all of your users or branch offices or storefronts, and something to detect when, say, randomly, say the Sacramento store has an attack in the morning. Hopefully the firewall deals with it, the firewall updates the logs, everything is good. Now, if the Tucson store has a very similar attack in the morning, again, the firewall deals with it, the firewall updates its logs, and all is good. If you have centralized policy and management and analytics, you'll have a central location to locate or to determine that two very similar attacks took place in a finite time period and that may or may not indicate a bigger threat that you should look into. And then finally, back to security as well, enforce and detect everywhere. So that's not just looking at what the firewall logs say, as in my previous example. That's not just looking at the antivirus software on all of the workstations. That's looking at what's taking place anywhere in the network, including all of these new work from home locations. When we talk about security, we typically talk about what we call the kill chain. And yeah, that's kind of an ominous name, but actually it does make sense when you look at this kind of objectively from a distance. So we look at 7 different stages of threats. 7, can't even do that with numbers and fingers anymore. I guess I need more coffee. 7 different levels of the kill chain, and we work this kind of from the top down. So the first level is probably the simplest, which is reconnaissance. That's looking for a vulnerable target. And that reconnaissance could be very, very targeted with some very discrete phishing software, or trying to exploit particular vulnerabilities in a particular organization for political gain or for financial gain, or think of Sony 2 years ago. That was a great example of very, very good reconnaissance taking place. Just as a random example of reconnaissance, I'm sure all of you have home routers, either through your cable company or your fiber optics provider. Your home routers and firewalls have logs attached to them. At some point, take a look at those logs. See how many attacks they're deflecting, or not even attacks, but just basic simple pings or attachment requests and so forth. I get about 25 a day on my home router, and I've been told that that's actually low compared to many others. So that's reconnaissance, just looking for a response for a vulnerable target. Once you have a response, then you want to weaponize something based upon what that response is. Did that response come from a tablet? Did it come from a Mac? Did it come from a server? Based upon all of those, you would want to weaponize the right type of attack to go for that particular type of workstation. Then you need to deliver the attack. How do you deliver an attack? Well, the 2 easiest ways are either tricking the user into clicking somewhere, in which case you will deliver something in return, a little bit of a surprise, or an email attachment. We all get, I don't know how many emails every day. They all have, lots of them have attachments. Those attachments often are innocuous PowerPoint files, Word attachments, perhaps pictures from your aunt's picnic, whatever the case may be. but some of those attachments could also be malicious. And in fact, some of those attachments could be disguised as innocuous PowerPoint documents, but yet they could also be malicious behind that. So that's delivering. Next step, exploitation and installation. So you delivered a PowerPoint with something malicious to it, to the user. If the user deletes it, well, nothing happened. But if he clicks on it, then you can install your exploit. Another step attached to all of this, command and control centers. This may or may not happen with regards to the attacks, but a command and control center is where you upload the information from the user. So if, for example, you wanted to mine credit cards on users' workstations, what would you do with that information? You'd need to upload it somewhere. Now, firewalls typically block inbound connection requests from weird places. So if you were getting an inbound connection request from, say, Russia, your firewall should block that automatically. It should update the log, and that would be one of the 25 I just mentioned. However, firewalls typically trust people internal to an organization. So if you initiate a connection somewhere from internal to the outside world, that should be trusted, that should be valid. So that's what happens when the exploit actually gets installed. It initiates the request to go to Russia, and then it can upload your information to the command and control site. After that, lateral movement or propagation can take place. So that's the exploit moving from your PC to your neighbor's PC, to the HR PCs, to the engineering PCs. And then finally, acting on the objective. Suppose it was ransomware, and it's going to move throughout a hospital. Let's go worst case scenario. By the way, hospitals are very, very ripe targets for ransomware in 2020 because they all have an incredibly important job to do. They don't have time to debug things, so paying is easier than trying to fix things. And also, things like antivirus updates are somehow getting lost in the big picture of saving lives. So acting upon the objective is installing the ransomware and trying to collect the bitcoins for it. So that's the kill chain. That's nothing about Juniper yet, but I'm going to show you this exact same slide a little while from now and show you how you can attach that to specific things that can actually protect each of those steps. Let me pause for just a moment. Bailey, any questions?
Someone asked if you have any thoughts on the FireEye breach.
Sorry, couldn't quite hear you.
Do you have any thoughts on the FireEye breach?
I do not. I apologize. I have not looked into that one just yet.
Okay.
But that's a great question, and you just gave me a good homework assignment to get back to you guys on.
Okay, thanks.
Using the old school note-taking for that. Okay, the connected security portfolio from Juniper. Basically, in the middle there where you see enforcement and you see everything in official Juniper green colors, what it really shows is pretty much all of our products. So any product that we make is designed to detect and enforce security. Whether or not you choose to use it for that, in addition to its normal functions, is entirely up to you. But this is our concept of security everywhere. Our specific firewall product line is called the SRX line, and that's at the right. The way you read SRX is it stands for security, routing, and switching. So all in one. And I'm going to get back to that a little bit later in the morning here as well. All of these products run the Junos operating system. So that's the exact same operating system for our switches, our routers, and our firewalls. So that means when we say SRX, switching, routing, and security, that the full Junos operating system is there to run BGP, to run OSPF, to run access control lists, to run policy-based routing, to run 8 qualities of service for each and every port. And by the way, it's stateful inspection up to layer 7 for full firewall capabilities. So that's really where security plays in our product line. But once again, that's not the full story at all. We will never ever be able to keep up with the bad guys on our own. Absolutely no company on the planet can do that, no matter what marketing documents say. However, there are lots of other partners out there who are looking at one part of the problem. So for example, denial of service attacks. We absolutely have denial of service attack detection and prevention, and we have lots of triggers and lots of timers tied to that. However, Carrero bases their entire existence on finding deep denial of service attacks, especially on the internet level. They share their information with us. We share our information with them. So that's a way to really improve that specific portion of security for all of our users. And if you look at some of our other partners, each of them have their own area of specialization, and we work seamlessly between each other. And we also can automate the responses. If you look at the very top of this picture, tying all these components together, you need some sort of orchestration and management software. And that's what we call Juno Space or Security Director. And that can be either on-prem or cloud, or actually a hybrid of both of those. So working all together, we try to give you an integrated security solution for the entire network. Now, some components of this. There used to be a popular buzzword in security called Unified Threat Management, UTM. That's kind of out of vogue at this point. I don't really know why. I think it was probably overused. So it's given way to content security. So really nothing has changed in the overall concept, just the name. So content security means different things to different people. We try to define it extremely broadly. So we look at content security as having several different components. The first three of which are on this slide, more on the next slide as well. So one component, web filtering. Now, URL filtering is pretty simple. You can create blacklists or whitelists, and you can list all of the URLs that an individual employee or office or organization can go to, or you can list all of the ones that you would block organizations from going to. Once again, we use a partner for this, and our partner is actually tracking every website on the planet at all times. They then categorize those websites into 100 some different individual categories. You can then block or allow access to, blacklist or whitelist, things by individual categories. There's what's known as a big five in the industry, where many organizations just automatically block all 5 of these as a general policy. And I think you guys could pretty much come up with what those are on your own, but they're hate sites, they're adult content, drug sites, drug and alcohol sites, that is, firearms, and gambling. So you can block one of those individually, you can block all 5 at once, however you want to do it. And by the way, if you decide to block all adult content sites, we're also tracking foreign adult content sites as well. So if you type in a URL in German, it still goes into the same category, same block. If you have something that's spoofing another site, we try to keep track of that. In other words, we look at the intent as opposed to the letter of the law. Now, interestingly, we're working with a partner up in the Pacific Northwest, and their corporate policy is to block those big 5. However, they have a big customer that's one of the Indian casinos up in the Northwest. So that's their customer, but they're blocking gambling access. So they have a policy to block gambling access, but allow access to that specific casino so that they can help them out. So you get a lot of flexibility with regards to all of this, and you can change it dynamically at any time. Antivirus software. I would strongly suspect that everyone on this call is fairly high tech. So therefore, you probably have corporate policies, and you probably have a corporate protocol for keeping end-station antivirus up to date. In fact, with Juniper, mine updates automatically behind the scenes, whether I want it to or not, and I usually don't even know when it takes place. However, I'd also suspect that there are many less technical organizations out there that may not be so vigilant. So we can do antivirus software or antivirus detection on the network, on the network and security gear itself. In other words, your SRX can also protect you from malware. And this is a case of doing it all in real time, constantly updating it, and also, once again, using a partner that's got a honeypot up there out in the world to try to find malware as soon as it comes out. So this prevents threats from installing on external devices. Anti-spam, boy, is that stuff annoying. Oh, one of my favorite trivia questions here, if you ever want to use this on your friends as well, is think about this for a moment. Do you have any idea or any guesses as to which region of the world that generates the greatest preponderance of spam? And give that just a moment's thought here. And I'll tell you, when somebody first asked me that question, my mind immediately went to China. And yes, they are up there in the top 3, but they are not number 1. Oddly enough, the number 1 spam generator on the planet tends to be the Caribbean. And actually, they outstrip the others by a pretty good long shot, pretty good margin. So the reasons for that are kind of odd, though they make sense when you think about them. First of all, in the Caribbean, they have a fairly well-educated workforce that's also underutilized. So that means you can hire good spammers pretty cheaply. Secondly, they're within a time zone or two of the east coast of the US, which is a huge financial target. They're within 3 or 4 time zones of the entire US. Add Canada to that as well, and you've got some great targets for spamming with regards to whatever you want to sell. So you put those two together, and if you're a pharmaceutical company that wants to saturate the East Coast with spam by the end of the day, you just call your favorite Caribbean spammer and it gets done. So anyhow, yeah, that's way off on a tangent. What we do for anti-spam is we work with an organization, we work with a third party that has 25,000 honeypots throughout the world just looking for spam. They have loads of email addresses, including the incredibly obvious ones in all of those honeypots. When they detect spam, they can come out with a new address to block within 20 minutes, they claim. Because we use a partner for all this, and because they vet everything first, Juniper's version of that story is we can identify the spam and we can propagate that address to all of our subscribers within 60 minutes. Interestingly also, I don't know why, but just kind of for the fun of it, Juniper publishes every morning a list of the 100 biggest spammers of the day. And even if you're not a subscriber, you can download that list for free and port it to all of your network devices in terms of an ACL. So that's part of content security. More content security, advanced threat prevention. So advanced threat prevention means looking at very, very persistent threats, things that are going to keep trying new avenues, and then they're going to try to propagate with lateral movement throughout your organization. We're going to watch that. We're going to do baselines and watch for anomalies and be able to react to that as well. Malware, whether it's known or unknown, is the most common source of all that. And then DDoS prevention. The very simplest DDoS attack in the world, and this goes back to the 1990s, I think, is just a ping storm. Every network administrator on the planet uses the command ping. The joke is if somebody calls and says they can't get the help desk and says they can't get to the Denver server, the help desk attendant says, well, I can ping the Denver server. The network's not to blame. So the simplest attack in the world is just to do thousands and thousands of pings. And a very simple policy to prevent that is to say if you make up the number or the metric, more than 10 pings a second, well, that's probably not the guy at the help desk checking out Denver. That's probably a denial of service attack, automatically start blocking. And you can block them all unequivocally, or you could rate limit them to 1 ping a second if you suspect that maybe there's actually something valid in all of those as well. That's just one example. That can also be extended to TCP storms. That can be extended to other types of attacks where you have SSL connections or somebody hitting the web server thousands of times per second. So all of that can be done on-prem. By the time it gets to your premise, though, you've already saturated the internet bandwidth. So yes, you're probably protecting your resources from that attack, whatever it happens to be, but your internet bandwidth or pipe is saturated because it's all getting there to be blocked. So you can also do that in the cloud. And for that, again, we work with a third party like the Carrero example that I gave you earlier. So looking at this from a bigger picture standpoint, you see Juniper in the green in the middle, tying all of this together, but you see SecondTel coming. So that's security intelligence. That's keeping track of third-party feeds with regards to malicious addresses. Those malicious addresses are forever changing. They know they're being attacked. So for example, if you had a policy to block all traffic, say you're a small savings and loan, and you have a policy to block all traffic coming from North Korea. There's no reason any North Korean should ever need to access your banking resources. The North Korean IP addresses are very well known. They're actually a very small internet block, so it's easy to have a policy to block all of those. However, we've also seen that they have some very clever hackers who are going to spoof, say, legitimate Canadian IP addresses. So SecondTel, security intelligence, tracks things like that. And they say if you are in fact blocking North Koreans, you now also need to block this seemingly legitimate Canadian or Australian or whatever it happens to be IP addresses. We use reputation sites that are always scoring IP addresses based upon whether they're totally innocuous or whether they're actually attached to some sort of malware. And we're constantly updating that as well. We have 9 intelligence feeds or threat feeds that we process as Juniper. We keep that as a fairly tightly guarded secret as to what those 9 are. In fact, they do tend to change from time to time. But more significantly, you can also add your own. So I had a customer meeting about a year ago with a company, and I was talking about these 9 threat feeds, and one of the engineers from the customer said, now, are any of these feeds tied to the US government and their feeds? And I said, well, yeah, wink, wink, I cannot really confirm or deny that. And the guy said, well, that does absolutely nothing for us. I said, okay, why? What do you need? And he says, well, we're owned by a German company. And we value German feeds much higher than we value anything from the US. Thought about that with regards to Germany's reputation for engineering and saw some logic to that. The answer is they can absolutely import German feeds as well, or any others on their own. So we use those threat feeds as another source of information. We analyze everything that we get because we are going to get some redundant information from 9 different threat feeds plus your own. We are going to get some false positives with all of that. So we apply some analytics to that. And then from there, we can use automation to apply advanced detection or prevention. So we take the information in, we process the information, then we pass it down to all the network components saying, you want to allow this type of traffic, you want to block these types of downloads, and by the way, you really want to block this Canadian IP address too. So it's a continuous circle is what I'm trying to say with all of this for detection, mitigation, and intelligence. Let me pause for just a moment, see if there are any questions, Bailey.
Yes, we do have a couple.
Oh, good.
First one, can what is learned on the Juniper device be shared with all devices?
Absolutely. So the way we do that is through the central management station. And that's what we call security director, which I'll show you a picture of in just a few moments. So the information can be shared with all, or it could just be shared with a subset if that's appropriate too. So you can process the information, determine that it's only applicable to stores, not to headquarters, or you could pass it on to all of the above.
Okay. Next question, are TOR nodes able to be detected?
Yes, forgot about the dark web and all of this, but very good point, absolutely. Actually, that's done several different ways. First of all, there's a specific protocol that's used at times there. Secondly, reputation really identifies onion routers as well. So if you ever want to buy a credit card or narcotics or something online, that's where you go, is to the dark web, and you get there through the onion routers. And you really, really do want to keep that traffic off of your corporate network, probably out of your home network as well.
Thanks, Bill. No more questions right now.
Okay, good questions. I appreciate it. Okay, let's talk about one specific function for just a moment here, sandboxing. So pretty much every major vendor has a sandboxing component, and most of these are cloud-based, and Juniper does too. So the concept of sandboxing is that when your user downloads a new file, one way or another, perhaps from clicking on one of those websites, or perhaps from clicking on an email attachment of some sort, if that file is in fact an executable, it can be uploaded to the sandbox. The sandbox is just basically a series of servers in the cloud, and they will run that file for 7 minutes and see if it detonates. I never have learned why 7 minutes is the magic number, but it seems like every vendor uses 7 minutes. Juniper uses 7 minutes as well. So if that file is in fact pictures from your aunt's picnic over the summer, or your aunt's new kitten, then it's totally innocuous. You can access the file. If the file detonates, well, that's a bad thing. So it should be deleted from the network altogether, and protect the network from that. Now the challenge here is that malware developers have kind of caught on to the game. They realize that they could be running a sandbox for 7 minutes. So they've come up with things like detonating on the 8th minute, or detonating on the 2nd run, or perhaps they're very, very subtle about what they do, so they don't truly detonate, but they try to steal your credit cards. All of these things, or they've also found out that if they want to steal credit cards, they need to get to an actual workstation, like the Mac that I'm using for this presentation, or perhaps the Macs or the tablets or the PCs that you're using to view this from. So they don't want to run in a sandbox environment in a cloud, or they don't want to run on a server. So they'll try to detect that and make sure that it's actually a valid target. So what we do is we use some fairly advanced techniques of deception and provocation to actually make the malware expose itself. We realize that many types of malware are already known, and we can immediately respond back to the client saying good, bad, or otherwise. But if it's something new, something that we haven't seen before, we're going to certainly see if it detonates, but we're also going to try to convince it that it's a valid target, so that if it does have some defense mechanisms built in, we'll be able to still convince it that it's legit and see what happens. So in order for it to find a valid target, like one of these PCs in front of you here on the picture, what would a PC have? Well, a PC would probably have a mouse. So we'll have some mouse movements. Perhaps some keystrokes, we'll simulate that. Have a microphone, so we'll have a microphone feed. It would have an internet connection. These are all things that the program itself can ask the workstation about, and the workstation will provide a response. In fact, it can ask the workstation if it's a server. And if it's a server, there's a special code that would be returned as well. Instead of returning the server code, we return I'm just a humble little workstation. For those of you with kids, one thing that a lot of malware will use for detection is to see if there's a webcam camera there. Please, please, please make sure your kids have one of these slides over their webcam. There are lots of things out there that will actually try to enable and exploit the webcam as well. It's disgusting to even have to say that, but that's very much the case right now. Deception. So what would the malware want? I mentioned credit cards. It might want user files. It might want your contact list. Now, if it doesn't detonate and try to destroy anything on your PC, it's not going to count as a detonation from our competitor's version of sandboxing. However, if it does ask for credit cards, and by the way, we do have some stored simulated credit cards as well, If it does ask for credit cards, that's highly, highly suspicious. So we'll factor that into the response we send back to the end user. Now, the best way to figure out what a program does if it's an executable is to attach a debugger to it and go through step by step by step. And if it's something subtle, like looking for credit cards, if it's something explosive, like detonating malware, we'll see that. The malware developers have caught on to that trick as well. So if you attach a debugger to the software, which we absolutely do, some malware is designed to just dissolve. Once again, if we attach a debugger and it dissolves, that's very, very suspicious. We'll also run the malware multiple times in case it's designed to detonate on the second or third run. We'll also change the clock on the device. So if it's watching the clock, we'll detect that with our debugger. But if it's also designed to execute on the 8th minute or the second day or the 30th minute, make up your own timer on all that, we'll notice that as well, and we'll be able to return a response back to the user. Now, the response that we send back is an integer. Our colleagues at some of the other security organizations send back either a red, yellow, or green response. Red, it's a nuclear bomb, drop it. Green, it's a picture of your aunt's picnic. Yellow, I don't know. We're a little more granular than that. Again, we send back a 0, meaning picture from your aunt's picnic, a 9, meaning it's nuclear, and then subjective in between. The official Juniper best practice recommendation is to delete anything that's a 4 or worse. I'm a security guy. I'm a little more conservative than that. I tend to suggest lower levels, but that does in fact create some false positives from time to time. So with all of that together, we believe we can detect threats much more vigilantly than many of our competitors. One big example of that, there was some ransomware going around earlier this year. It was transmitted as a simple Word document, as a attachment in email that was a Microsoft Word document. So it looked like a little bit of a strange Microsoft Word document, so we uploaded it for further analysis. All of us get Microsoft Word attachments every single day, so that's not too odd. It was a couple 100 kilobyte file, again, pretty normal in that respect. However, it was a couple 100 kilobytes all in one single paragraph. Now, I've got to admit, we have some pretty poor tech writers in our industry who would do that. So that's not necessarily damning evidence unto itself, but it's odd. It was also a Microsoft Word document with no title. Once again, we have some strange people in our industry. Could happen. It was also a Microsoft Word document with no title that was several 100K long, written in Cyrillic characters. I have never gotten a legitimate email written in Cyrillic characters myself. Many of you have, I'm sure, but still that was yet another reason to be suspicious. And then when we actually attached the debugger and saw what happened, it tried to lock up the virtual computer and demand a Bitcoin. So all of these things figure into the response. If it did not detonate, lock up the debugger, and try to encrypt things and demand a Bitcoin, we still would have returned a slightly higher than normal response code just based upon the other profiles. Something else that we look at that's very suspicious too is what's called file entropy. So hackers tend to be a bit lazy. They know that new detection techniques are coming out almost as quickly as new attacks come out. So what they often do is they just copy a file over and over and over again, making minor modifications in order to try to circumvent the latest detection. So we look at file entropy to see how many times it's been copied and regenerated. Good programming techniques do not allow you to do that. So if you are in fact a good programmer writing something legit, yeah, you may do a little bit of cut and paste, but you won't just keep copying and changing. So again, that figures into the score. So I know that was a lot on that slide, so let me pause for any questions there.
We do have one question. What is the max file size for files uploaded to the sandbox?
Great question. The answer is 20 meg.
Okay, thanks.
You,
That was
you
the
know,
only
in this
question.
industry, it depends is almost always the answer. It's kind of fun to be able to answer some with an exact number.
Yeah. Thanks.
Okay, from an operations point of view, I've given you lots of different tools that are all available at your disposal. Think back to the Target fiasco, probably 2 years ago now. They had all of those tools. Well, they at least had the 2018 version of all of those tools, and the 2018 version of all of those tools was still pretty good, but they were overwhelmed with them all, so they hadn't actually implemented many of them. So that's where Security Director comes into play. It gives you a holistic view of the network, and it lets you organize and push policies to all of your devices. Now, those devices could be physical or virtual. They could be firewalls, or they could just be something on a switch. They could be cloud-based, or they could be on-prem. Doesn't matter. So the first thing that we need to do in order to have effective security is to understand what's going on in the network. So with that, we'll be tracking actual application usage. We'll be tracking users. We'll be giving you a bubble chart that looks something like this. And this is the application one, as opposed to the user or organizational ones. So I'm going to guess that not many of your customers or network admins know exactly what the relative bandwidth is for all the different applications, such as Microsoft, such as surfing the web, such as viewing CNN. Well, here you have different bubbles that will give you that information. You can, of course, right-click on any of those for much more detail, which includes actual stats, the users involved, the end destinations involved, and it will give you the ability to write a policy. The policy could be to allow the traffic, to block the traffic, to rate limit the traffic, to write reports every time something happens. But here you have a view of what's going on in the network with more information than you've ever had. You also have a dashboard that will show you the macro picture. In this little particular view, looks like you're tracking 6 devices, some of which are blue, some of which are green. Green, of course, is good in the generally accepted scheme of things. Blue just might mean that you might want to look at some of the policies on these devices. Maybe you need to reorganize them. Maybe you're coming up to some thresholds. And then there's also yellow and red alarms too. This is centralized device management for everything, and it can include cloud resources and container resources. And this is how you can keep track of the health of the network, push policies out to users, to groups, to the enterprise, upgrade all of the software, and also automate the remediation. And again, that extends to public clouds as well. In each and every public cloud, you can deploy what we call a virtual SRX. So that's a virtual security appliance to protect your resources. Now, shadow IT is a huge problem at many organizations. And this has also really taken off in the COVID era with work from home. So shadow IT means that some sort of engineer came up with a brilliant idea for something that he wants to develop or test. And he contacted IT, and IT said, yeah, we'd love to support you on this. It will cost you X dollars, and we can have this in a month. Or he could just run his credit card at Amazon and get those same resources. Well, if he's developing a whole new product for your company, or even if he's just trialing a new idea or a new concept, your competitors would love to know about that. Once again, Amazon is very, very secure. They are protecting their resources from this guy who may have in fact picked up malware. So with just enforcing a virtual SRX or a virtual firewall also as an Amazon resource, you can now apply the exact same policies of the enterprise to that new project. You can also develop access lists saying that, yes, he's allowed to get there. Yes, his collaborators can get there. But no, you think you'll keep some of the other people in the organization out of that particular project. Maybe it's a skunkworks type project. So don't ever forget the public clouds when you look at security. And then a cool thing that the Juniper brings to the party as well, we also have what we call the Threat Labs organization within Juniper. So these are the white hat hackers. We have a group of 25 of them, and they're constantly looking for new exploits. These are guys who live for breaking into one of our particular network devices or applications. In fact, we have a joke going around that it's a very bad day for a developer when one of these guys comes to his cube, or since we're working from home, sends him a message, an instant message. So they're always looking for ways to break things. And they do this also on the internet side. So we have lots of honeypots that are collecting exploits as well. These are 25 people who are always publishing the latest exploits in the internet, coming up with tips and tricks for our users, but they're also sharing the information in public domain as well as with our own developers. And you can see they have lots of different ways they go about this. In fact, a somewhat funny story is one of these had signed up to speak at Black Hat last year, the hacker convention. And he was going to talk about a new way to break into ATM machines that he had come up with. Juniper does not believe in censoring at all. We believe in very, very open communications and open networks and open standards, open everything. We got a lot of pressure from two of our major banking customers to block that particular presentation. In general, we would not block things like that, but we did actually cave to the greater good of explaining how to hack ATM machines as probably not a good thing for the rest of the world. So that was one of the rare cases where we ever actually censored one of these guys. But that's the level of detection and research that they do. So wrapping up, coming back to the screen that we started with the kill chain. Same kill chain, but now we're tying some prevention mechanisms to each and every step. So reconnaissance, we can handle that with basic firewall capabilities on our SRX or our MX. Weaponization, that's a group of the hackers that I just talked about. They're always looking at new ways to target exploits once you find a legitimate target. Delivery, like to block that with advanced security concepts. Same with exploitation and installation. Excuse me. Command and control. We really use all of those threat feeds to help us identify command and control resources. Command and control resources tend to be very dynamic. They tend to be overseas, although just recently, a lot of them, there was a huge case where Ohio was, for some reason, the hotbed of command and control. I don't know if the actual hackers were in Ohio or if they were also overseas just using Ohio resources, but a little bit of trivia there. We were able to block access to those IP addresses. Lateral movement, that pretty much requires a little of everything. And finally, the acting upon the objectives, such as uploading the ransomware, we use advanced analytics to track all of that. So with that, you can look at every step on the kill chain. Not absolutely every step will be applicable to every organization, but we have ways with connected security to address all of those. So wrapping up with a tiny bit of marketing here over the next 2 minutes, then kind of opening it up for open questions and discussion. Why should you consider Juniper Connected Security? Well, the industry organizations say that it's pretty good. Top honors at Interop in Tokyo. I have never, ever seen 100% evasion block rates. I don't think we'll ever be able to duplicate that again. I think there was a bit of luck involved as well as skill. But the NSS labs gave us 100% evasion block rate ratings. From an exploit standpoint, I usually see numbers much more like this, 99.62. That's a really good number. It rounds to 100 in any of our minds, but still getting to that magic 100 is extremely rare. The number that I really like about this though, and this totally differentiates Juniper from everyone else, especially in the large data center or large internet connections, is that our block rate was 14 gigabits per second. And in fact, you can use multiple devices to multiply that number. So if you want to block lots and lots of exploits at a very high speed, we've kind of got the Maserati that's out there. Tying it all together into the big picture of the network, We've kind of talked about this bit by bit and piece by piece. This is a type proof of concept that we can do with you and with your resellers and with your customers and with your actual networking resources. So we can fit in as much or as little of this as may be appropriate based upon your needs. So finally, this is a little bit of salesmanship. What Juniper likes to say when we talk about security is change the game just a bit. Again, let's not talk about network security. Let's talk about building a secure network, or the old proverbial apples versus orange conversation. If you need a firewall and if you have an RFP for firewalls, we absolutely would love to help you respond to that. We'd love to tell you what our capabilities are. We'd love to show you how we can differentiate ourselves. But where it's really interesting is if we take the big picture and look at the entire network. So just from a branch office type perspective or a storefront perspective, look at the SRX, security plus routing plus switching. The Juniper solution is just one box, and again, right size for your needs. The other guy's solution, buy a switch, buy a router, buy a firewall. You know what? That's 3 devices, probably costs 3 times what one device does, and it's 3 times as challenging to manage as well. And while we're looking at that, let's talk about SD-WAN for the campus and branch. In the remote office, you need the security, you need the switching, you need the routing. We can also add wireless APs to that too. All of it can be centrally deployed and managed all through cloud resources. So let me skip the rest of the advertisements. Just wrap up with the key takeaways. Network complexity is on all of our minds. Security has to be part of the solution. Network complexity makes it even harder to tie all of that in. So Juniper would like security to be part of each and every element of your network, so that again, we have a secure network or connected security. With that, wrap up, and we have a minute or two for questions still, so we can open this up. But if I don't say it at the end, I really want to say happy holidays to everyone as well. Bailey,
Yeah,
any
we do have a
questions?
question. Yes. How are these services priced?
How are these services priced? Great question. Yeah, that additional layer of the OSI model pricing always comes in. First of all, the appliances that you see are in fact legitimate networking appliances, switches, routers, firewalls, and they're priced very competitively with regards to any of our competitors out there too. So that is in fact buying a box. The services that you see, for example, if you want to add anti-spam or malware detection or cloud services, are subscription-based services, and they're actually based they're based upon the length of the subscription, 1, 3, or 5 years, and they're based upon the size that you need in terms of bandwidth. That's where Securematics can really help all of you folks with coming up with some budgetary prices for your particular requirements.
Can the box work without the subscription?
With basic services, meaning security, switching, routing, and stateful firewall, yes. But to get all of the other services, including real-time updates, subscription services are really important there.
Okay. Looks like that was all the questions for now. Thanks so much, Bill.
Okay, thank you, everyone. Please let us know how we can help you. We'd love to at least come discuss your security concerns with you, and maybe we can give you a different view to consider. Maybe we can help. If not, we will certainly tell you that too. But on that note, happy holidays, everyone, and thank you for your time.
Thanks, Bill. Have a great day, everyone.